Hi everybody, my name is Caroline Busher. I'm an Irish Times best-selling author and my books include The Ghosts of Magnificent Children, The Girl Who Ate the Stars, Votes for Women, the Irish Women's Suffrage Movement, and my very latest book, The Legend of Valentine's Sorrow, will be on your bookshelves very, very soon. So I am so happy, delighted, honoured and thrilled to have been asked by Kilkenny Libraries to come and speak to you today about things that I love most in life. Creative writing, reading books, libraries, and an absolutely amazing summer reading adventure that's being run in all the libraries across Ireland throughout the summer. So it's really exciting. Now, I thought I'd share some of my amazing tips that I have for you guys today about writing, because sometimes we all have ideas. I believe that every single person in the world is creative and has an amazing thing called an imagination. Every person I meet has an imagination, but they don't often know how to start writing stories. So, as I was asked from Kilkenny Libraries today to talk to you, I thought it'd be a brilliant idea if I shared some of my top tips. So my tip number one for you is keep reading books. The more books you read, the better a writer you will become. And actually, you are in the perfect place if you go to visit any of the Kilkenny Library branches over the summer, because they're just stacked full of the most amazing books. There's funny books, there's historical fiction books, which are the books I love to read and write. There are factual books, there's books for everybody. And if you find it hard to think of a book that might be good for you to read or that you'd like to read, then maybe think about some of the things you're interested in. For example, if you really love soccer, then maybe you could find a book on soccer that could be of interest to you. Or if you like stories with magical realism in them, like Alice in Wonderland or The Secret Garden even, historically beautiful book, then maybe ask a librarian and they will be able to help you to find the perfect book for you. Because the more you read, the better your writing will be. It's like putting fuel in your engine if you were a space pilot going off to outer space. The more books you read, the better your writing will be. So get reading books. And in the libraries, it's absolutely amazing because you can take out 12 books at a time. That's like having your own mini library at home, guys. And what the best thing for me about libraries is that all the books are free. So you don't even have to pay. So go along to your libraries this summer and see what amazing books you can find. I was always there when I was a child because they're just the best places to be. Now, there is something else, as I just mentioned there, at the libraries this summer, and it's the Summer Stars Reading Adventure. Da, da, da. It sounds really exciting, doesn't it? Well, the Summer Stars Reading Adventure is run throughout the libraries in Ireland from the summer months, so from June to the 31st of August this year. And you can go along to your library and you can take out books and you can win little prizes, you can take part in competitions. It's absolutely amazing. And you can take note of all the books you've read over the summer. It's surprising how many books you can read if you put your mind to it. And even if you only read one or two books, that's fine as well. It's just being part of something really fun. But as I mentioned, this year they have a fantastic competition and it's a creative writing competition. And what they're asking you to do is to write 500 words. Now, 500 words may seem like a lot of words, but by the time I've shared some of my top tips with you today, you'll be flying it and you won't even think of 500 words as many at all. It's actually not that many once you get started. So, the Summer Stars Reading Adventure Competition has a sentence that begins like this. Of all the places in the world, I never thought I would be here. That's how it begins. So you have to use your imaginations and think of where is it? Where in the world are you going to be? Of all the places in the world I thought I would be, I never thought I would be here. So where could that be? Now, it could be an imaginary kingdom. It could be a palace. It could be in the middle of Wembley football stadium. It could be in Croke Park at a hurling match. Where could it be? You use your imaginations. And one tip I always give to people when they're starting off writing is before you even get started, maybe write a little plan of what you're going to write. So if I was going to do this creative writing competition, which I wish I could, but I'm a little bit too old. But if I was going to do this, I would brainstorm, which means basically getting all the ideas from your imagination out of your head and onto a piece of paper. So I would think of all the places in the world I never thought I would be here. Where could that be? So I get my pencil and my paper and I draw a big circle in the middle like a spidergram, and I'd write that in the center of the circle, and then I'd have all the ideas coming out from the outside, and I'd be thinking of, like, it wouldn't matter if all your ideas don't seem to connect at first, because that's the brilliant thing about stories. And actually the best stories in the world are always really unusual. So you might think, how would that go with this bit of the story? But it all just fits together when you give it a go. And another brilliant thing about writing is that you can always go back and change your story. So if you start off your story and you think, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, or I thought it was a brilliant idea at first, now I'm not so sure, you can always go back, you can start again, or you can just go back and change it and edit it. And I'm sure that there might be a teacher or your parents or grandparents who'd love to help you if you get stuck with some of the words or the spellings, because occasionally spellings can be quite tricky and it can be hard to think of how to spell the words. But don't worry, like I say, you can always go back and change your story and make it better. Actually, any book you see in any bookshelf in the libraries, in Kilkenny libraries, or any library or bookstore in Ireland, they have been written so many times you would not believe it, because the first time you never get everything right. So that's the brilliant thing about writing. You can go back and change it and make it better. Now, another tip I have for you when you're going to enter this wonderful creative writing competition as part of the Summer Stars reading adventure is always have a notebook handy. A notebook, I hear you say. Why would I need a notebook? Well, you never know when an idea is going to strike, and I often find that my ideas for stories come to me in the most unusual places. I could be out walking my neighbour's dog, or I could be in the middle of a supermarket when I get this brilliant idea for a book. And if I don't have a notebook with me and scribble it down really fast, the idea just seems to disappear, and I could go home and think, I had a great idea earlier, but I can't remember what it is. So my major tip for you guys is to always have a notebook handy, and you can scribble your ideas down. That means when you sit down to write your story or to enter the Summer Stars reading adventure competition, you will have so many ideas. You'll be bursting with ideas, because all you have to do is pick up your notebook and go through them and think, yes, I'd like to put that bit in the story. I think that'd work really, really well. Another thing is that you need to have characters in your story, don't you? So the characters are the people in the story, and they don't even have to be people, but they could be animals. You could have animals as your main characters, or even aliens as your main characters, whatever you want to. But characters are who the story happens to. So it's worthwhile spending a little bit of time thinking about your characters. Who are going to be the characters in your story? And if you're struggling with this, maybe think about some of the books that you have read and really enjoyed. What is it about those characters that you really, really like? So if you're a huge Harry Potter fan, for example, what is it about Harry Potter or Hermione Granger that you think are so fantastic? And maybe use those characters as inspiration for your own stories. And we all know and love fairy tales, so maybe read some old fairy tales and think about how they could inspire you to write your story. So there's stories all around us, and we can get inspiration wherever we go. So you can always have something to read, and then you have to think about your setting. So why is the setting important, and what is a setting actually? So the setting is where your story is going to take place. So as I love libraries so much, I often use libraries as settings in my stories. And actually, I think it would be a really nice idea if I read to you a little bit from one of my books, guys. So I'm going to read you a section from The Girl Who Ate the Stars. And the section I've decided to read to you today actually is in a library, because they are the coolest place in the whole entire world. In fact, of all the places in the world I never thought I would be, it would be libraries. But actually I did think I'd be there because I love them so much. Anyway, I'm going to read you a little bit from The Girl Who Ate the Stars. Now, The Girl Who Ate the Stars is a book, it would be known as historical fiction, but it's so full of magical realism and magic. So what happens in The Girl Who Ate the Stars is two children, Lottie and Albert Hope, live in England, in Manchester in England, in the 1940s. And as some of you may or may not know, there was World War II took place in the 1940s, and the children were evacuated, which means they were sent away from the cities and the towns to escape all the bombs. And the main characters in my story, Lottie and Albert, were sent to live in Ireland, because Ireland's just like the coolest place ever. So they came to live in Wexford. And when they are there, they meet some children, wait for it, some children who can turn into wolves. Yes, you heard it. The children in my book turn into wolves, and they enter an imaginary world called Wolfland. So I'm going to read you a little bit from the book now. And the part I've chosen to read, as I said, it's in a library. And during World War II, sometimes at night time, the bombs would be dropping on the cities, and it'd be quite scary. But people used to go underground into like underground railway stations or anywhere underground to escape all the bombs. And actually, I've heard stories of people underground in the air raid shelters or under the tunnels or the train stations, and they had so much fun. They'd sing songs and they'd all chat and get to know their neighbours, and it'd be very strange because it could be in the middle of the night, so they'd be sleeping in soundly in their beds and they'd have to get up and go underground. So I'm going to read you a bit where Lottie and Albert Hope are actually in the library when they hear that the bombs are on their way, so they have to make a dash for it. They should have returned from school hours ago, but Lottie had insisted that they visit the library on the way. It was her favourite place to be. Entering the old Victorian building was like stepping into another world. There were richly carved rose bookcases brimming with hundreds of old books. The high ceiling was shaped like a dome, and statues of philosophers lined the stone-shaped staircase that seemed to go on forever. There was a particular statue that Lottie liked most of all. It was of an angel with its arms outstretched. Lottie imagined the statues in the library coming alive at night time and walking along the dimly lit corridors. The library contained long mahogany desks which were punctuated with green reading lamps, and the wooden floors were polished until they shone. The library always smelt of furniture polish and dusty old books. Lottie went there to forget about the war, to read books and to escape to far-off lands where children didn't have to sleep below the ground, where bombs didn't fall from the sky, and when there were no rations so that people could eat whatever food they wanted to. Today, Lottie had lost all track of time. She was reading a book about astronomy when Sylvia, one of the librarians, snatched it from her. "I was reading that, Sylvia," Lottie protested. Then she noticed that Sylvia was wearing her blue woolen overcoat and a hat on her head that matched the colour of her lips. "I must close the library, Lottie," Sylvia said urgently. "There are German planes approaching. Don't you hear the siren?" Now Lottie did hear its warning wail. "I'm sorry, Sylvia. I was just so lost in my book." Sylvia was very fond of Lottie. She had no children of her own and enjoyed talking to her about books. Lottie wanted to be a librarian, just like Sylvia when she grew up. Sometimes, when no one was looking, Sylvia would allow Lottie to go behind the main desk and check out her own books. "You must find your brother Albert and go to a bomb shelter right away, Lottie." Just then there was a booming sound. The lights flickered overhead and books toppled from the shelves. Lottie sprang to her feet. Crowds of people were heading for the door of the library. There was panic everywhere as people made a dash for it. "Albert, where are you?" Lottie cried. She had no time to lose. She needed to find her brother fast. She ran between bookshelves and looked under tables. She thought she'd never find him until, at last, she noticed him, sitting cross-legged beneath one of the desks reading a book on trains. She was so grateful that she found him. She pulled him out and hugged him tightly. "Quick, Albert, we must hurry right away. The Germans have arrived." Lottie held her brother's hand, and they joined the line of people who were scrambling to get out of the library. "Form an orderly queue, please, ladies and gentlemen," Sylvia shouted as she held the main door open and helped people out. "You will get out quicker this way." So that's just a little section from The Girl Who Ate the Stars. And like I say, I thought I'd share it with you today because it's in a library. And like I say, libraries are the most amazing places that you can ever go to. So to continue with some ideas for creative writing and ideas for you getting started, one thing I want to say to you is don't wait for the perfect idea to come along. If I was to sit down and wait for an idea to come along, I could be sitting for ages and not get started on my stories. So I always say to people, just put the pen to paper and have a go. Just let your imagination take you by the hand and bring you on a fantastic journey. Because if we have to wait for the ideas to come, sometimes they need a little bit of a nudge. So sometimes if you just sit down and write, you'll get an idea. It might not, like I say, be perfect the first time round, but you can bet by the time you have finished your story, you will at least have something. You'll have wrote something. So that's always the best advice I can give. Another tip that I have for you is sometimes when we're writing stories, we might get a bit stuck. And let's face it, it happens to everybody. And this is known as something called writer's block. Writer's block, you might say. Writer's block sounds like a strange thing. Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it feels as though your imagination gets a bit stuck and your ideas get blocked. And instead of sitting, staring at your page, thinking, what am I going to write? I can't think. My imagination feels like it's blocked. Well, my advice to you would be to get up and go for a walk or do something completely different. Because if you sit staring at the page for hours, you'll just end up thinking, oh, I can't do this anymore. But if you go outside in nature, maybe go for a walk in the local woods with your parents, bring your dog for a walk, go outside and spend some time in nature in the fresh air, you will come back full of ideas because you'll have given your brain some time off. You'll have had a bit of a relaxation, and that's always a really good thing too, to take time out and relax. So don't get too stressed out if you feel like you can't think of anything to write. Even if you do all these things, sometimes the ideas just don't want to come at the very same time when you want to write your story. So if that happens to you guys, get up, go and do something completely different. Play with your friends, go out for a walk, as I said. Maybe pick up an instrument and play a tune if you're good on the tin whistle, whatever it is. But just don't worry about it. You can always come back to your story later and give it another go. And then sometimes when I read over my story, I often think to myself, is this story any good? I don't know. But you know what? The main thing is that you enjoyed writing it. So you don't need to even worry. You're not, it's the idea of the Summer Stars Reading Adventure Competition is just to get you having fun and to get you writing. So there's nobody going to be there saying, no, that's not right, you didn't spell that, or that sentence isn't wrote the way it should be. You don't have to worry. You just have to do your best and have a bit of fun. And when you go to the library over the summer, you'll be able to see there's so many books on offer. So there's books for like babies up to teenagers. So there's books for every age group as well in the libraries. So there's lots of fun to be had in Kilkenny libraries over the summer months. Now, I thought it might be nice if I read you another little bit of my writing, just to get you all inspired and thinking about stories today. And all my books are, of course, available in Kilkenny libraries. So this book I'm going to read you is the first book I ever wrote, and it's The Ghosts of Magnificent Children. And this is my author copy. So as you can see, I read this a lot, so it's a really old copy. And this book is all about some children who get captured by Bad Blood's magical circus. And they get taken to an island off the west coast of Ireland. And 100 years later, their ghosts start to appear. And all the children in my book have something very unusual about them, very unusual abilities. So I'm going to read you a little bit from the book where the children are captured by Bad Blood's circus. And they have to perform for the circus for the very first time. And they really don't want to, but they have no choice. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the greatest show on earth. You are about to witness death-defying stunts, and Tom Thumb and Thumbelina, the smallest man and woman in the history of the world. But first, allow me to introduce you to the most magnificent children on earth. Archie, I can't do it, Millie cried. A pain shot through her stomach. Just do as we rehearsed, he said. Two clowns with painted faces and large trousers opened the red velvet curtains. Theo was scared that Millie would spoil things, so he stepped into the ring first. He had never revealed his gift to people before, and if he had the choice, he wouldn't have done it now. However, he knew there was no other way. His heart thumped in his chest as he looked around him at the sea of faces that stared back at him, and he felt faint. What's so magnificent about him? Yeah, he's just a lad. The crowd heckled, they hissed, and they booed at him. Theo closed his eyes tight and concentrated as hard as he could. He knew it was now or never. Moments later, a woman in the back row screamed. Theo looked down and realised that his feet had risen 8 inches off the ground. He smiled with delight, folded his arms across his chest, and floated across the ring. He's tied up with a rope, someone cried. Yeah, it's a trick. I want my money back. Theo began to wobble, and for a moment he thought he would fall to the ground. But then Ginny appeared, and the audience were captivated by her. The crown of green silk flowers on her head made her appear like royalty. In her hand was a wooden hoop decorated with purple and pink ribbons. Ginny placed the hoop over Theo's head, ran it along his body and under his feet. The crowd clapped and cheered, and Ginny felt relieved. Theo carefully lowered himself to the ground, and then he revealed his second gift. So that's a little section from The Ghosts of Magnificent Children. I hope you enjoyed me reading it to you. I had so much fun writing this story and writing this book that I hope that you guys have just as much fun entering the Summer Stars Reading Adventure competition this year. And remember, all you have to do is write 500 words inspired by this sentence. Of all the places in the world, I never thought I would be here. So if that was in relation to my story, obviously it would be in the circus, because the characters in my book never thought they were in a million years going to end up in the circus. So you bring your characters on an amazing journey and an amazing adventure, guys, and have a wonderful time doing it. And never worry about your spellings, guys. I know so many people really do struggle with spellings, but some of the kids and young people and even adults that I meet who struggle with spelling have the most amazing stories. They're brilliant storytellers. So don't ever let spelling put you off. And in fact, some of the most amazing writers in the world struggle with spelling. So it should be never something you should ever worry about, is your spelling. So another thing I wanted to tell you is just keep going. The more writing you do, the better you will get at it. If you think about it, any athlete you know that runs in a race or even plays tennis or whatever, plays soccer stars, they all practice really hard, don't they, to get really good at what they do. And it kind of makes sense. The more you practice your soccer skills, the better you're going to be as a soccer player or a rugby player or a dancer. Maybe you're know people who are fantastic dancers, but they put hours and hours into practicing, don't they? So the more you practice at your writing, the better you will be at it. And it's just the way it is. So keep practicing your writing every single day. And especially over the summer, it's really nice because you can just escape into your imagination, into your imaginary world and see what happens. Another thing is, it's really important to have your own little space to write in. Now, I know it's really hard. Sometimes you've got lots of brothers and sisters or a busy house and you need to find somewhere to write. But it could be just a little corner in the living room or in your bedroom where you go to write and you bring your little notebook and you write. So just make a little space that you like to go to write. It could be a spot in the garden, especially as it's summertime and the sun might be shining and you might feel inspired to go outside and write. So if you have a little space that you can go to write and make it your own little magic world, that's always a really good piece of advice for you too. So I think that I've told you so much now about this competition. I hope that lots of you will enter it. And I'm sure that you're going to have a great time writing your stories. So just use your imagination. Think about your setting. Think about your characters. Think about what you want your story to be about. And just have some fun. Because ultimately, writing is about having fun. So you really just have to have as much fun as you can. And I always say to people that writing stories is a bit like talking through your pen. Does that make sense? So when you're writing a story, it's like you're just literally, whatever you think, you're just writing it down. So it's like telling a story when you're speaking it, but this time you're using your pen. So it's literally the same thing. So have a little bit of fun with it. And I wish you all the very, very best with the Summer Stars Reading Adventure Creative Writing Competition this year. And don't forget to pop into Kilkenny Library Services. They're open during the summer and they've so many amazing books on offer. And like I say, anything you need, you can always ask the librarians for help. There's also a fabulous online service as well with the libraries, and they often have like this where people come on and talk or do story times, and there's a borrow box service, so you can borrow some books online as well. So your parents might be able to help you with that, anyone that struggles with technology. So the borrow box is an app, and it's an actually brilliant way to read. So some people like to read on their devices, so that's a really useful way to do it. And the thing I love about the borrow box app is that you can change the font size. So some people, like I say, might struggle with spelling and they might find it really tricky to spell or to read on certain colour pages. So with BorrowBox, you can change the colour of the page that you're reading on your device, so it makes it easier to read the stories. And there's something called dyslexia that lots of people have. I know loads of people have dyslexia, but if you have dyslexia, you can use a dyslexia-friendly font to make the reading easier. So there's lots of amazing things at the libraries, guys. And I hope you have the best time this year at the Summer Stars Reading Adventure in Kilkenny Libraries. And I hope to see you all soon in the libraries. And don't forget, my next book, The Legend of Valentine Sorrow, will be in Kilkenny Libraries very soon. And I hope you all have a fantastic summer. Keep reading, keep writing, and have so much fun. Bye!